Hey everybody, this is shaolin.ai, and today we're going to be making a GitHub repository, cloning it to our local um, desktop, and making a few changes and going through the process of how to push those changes back up to GitHub. All right, let's just hop right into it. So first step you're going to need to do is you're going to have to make yourself a GitHub account. Just go to github.com, make an account. You'll need to give them an email. You'll need to make a username. Pay attention to those two things because you'll need to remember them. But basically, as soon as you make your account, you should navigate to your account. You can go check out your repositories. Yours will probably be blank. And then what you're going to do is find this green button where it says New Repositories, or if you can't find that or your page looks a little different, you'll go up to the little plus sign up here where you can make a new repository next to your little avatar in the corner. So I'll go ahead and do that and say New Repository. And then you're presented with creating a new repository. The first thing you have to do is name your repository. You can name it anything you'd like. I'm going to name mine demo repo. And just FYI, with your repository names, you usually don't want to have spaces in them, but we'll talk about that later. Next, you can set your repository to public or private. Public is typically what you'll want to do unless you have a reason for making your repository private. There's a few other options down here which we'll talk about for a second. One, it says, do you want to add a README? This is where you can add a description for your project. And typically, you always want to add a README. That's always something you want to add uh, to your repository. And oops, one second. And then it asks if you want to do a git ignore. This is for things down the line when you're wanting to have certain files ignored by your GitHub repository, and then such as like passwords and things like that. The next thing is to choose a license. You can choose a license. This would be like, if you want to make sure you have a copyright on your code and nobody can steal it. For now, we'll just do the README though, because that's the only thing we really need to worry about. So we're just going to hit this button, click Create Repository. And then once the repository is created, it'll take you to the little home page of the repository. And basically what we need to do is clone our repository. So how do we do that? Well, there's a few different ways of doing it, but basically you want to find this green code button. You click down on it, you'll see there's a few options. You have HTTPS, SSH, etc. If you haven't set up your SSH keys already, then you'll be just using this HTTPS thing. You'll want to copy the link to your repository, which you'll see is just github.com, your username, and then the name of the repository.git, and you'll just copy that. You'll see also that you have the option of opening it with GitHub Desktop, which is their program, or downloading a zip file. You can do all of that. That's totally fine, but that's not what we'll be doing. So then what you need to do is open up your terminal, or if you're on Windows, open up your GitBash. I've got mine open here. And so basically, how do you clone a repository? Well, you type in git clone, and then you give it the name of your repository. So this command will clone the repository. Now, what you'll want to do first is you'll want to know where you are and in your file system, and you'll want to potentially change directories into whichever folder it is that you want to clone this repository is. So I'm just going to clone it into my base area, so I don't have to do that. So I'm just going to do, once again, git clone, and then the name of the repository. Then I hit enter, and it cloned the repo, as you can see. Now, if this is your first time doing any Git command in your terminal, it may have asked you to configure your GitHub settings. So it may have done something, asked you to do something like git config global username or git user email and put those in. So basically what you would do if it did ask you to do that is just type in git config global and then user.name and then put in your username and do the same for the email. Exactly what it tells you to do. I've already configured that, so it didn't ask me. But basically, that's just how GitHub keeps track and authenticates who is actually pulling the information and pushing the information to GitHub. But we'll skip that for now, and we'll talk about that later. Um, but basically, now that we've cloned our repository, we can actually go into our repository locally on our local file system. So we change directories into our demo repo, and you'll see that it says main, which indicates that this is a repository. And if we hit ls, we'll see that that readme file is there. And so now what we can do is we can make changes in any text editor to our README file. So we could just open it up. I'm going to say code readme.md, and it opened up my little Visual Studio Code. And you'll see it just says demo repo, and then I can add more text here. And start including more stuff into my repository. I can save this, and then now that I've made changes to the files, there's now changes to be added. So the next command you need to do to add those changes, which I did here locally, you'll see they haven't showed up here on our README on GitHub yet. So what do we need to do? We just hop back in here and we have to add our changes. So we say git add, and we can specify which file we change by typing in readme.md, or if you just want to add in all changes in your repository, you use a period, git add period, with spaces in between. That sets up those changes to be added. But that doesn't change our repository yet either. So there's actually a 3-step process to pushing new information to GitHub. And so the first step is git add. The next step is git commit. And when you do a commit, you're supposed to add a message. So you add -m to say the next thing I'm going to add is a message. And then in quotes, you say, here is my message. And you explain what it is you're adding, what changes you did. This makes it very easy if you need to go back and find out, hey, when did we change this? When did we add this? When did we lose this? You can go find it in these messages. It makes it very easy. So always add a message. And then we've committed our changes. Once again, those changes are not yet on our repository until we push them. And so once again, 3-step process: git add, git commit, and then the last step is simply git push. And when you push, it may prompt you to sign in, because I'm not using my SSH tokens. So you will just authorize. But this is why we do SSH tokens, because it will ask you to do this every single time. And it's much easier if you have those tokens set up where you basically have the keys to unlock it every time you run it. But let me see if that went through. It says it did. So you'll see that successfully it added this stuff. It wrote some objects to the thing. You'll see we don't see the changes. Make sure to refresh your repo. Hey, there's my text I added. So that was a kind of quick overview with minimal bumps. If you run into anything, you can add a question in the comments below. you can reach out to support@shaolin.ai. We'll get back to you and help you out. Um, we will also be covering this live in class, so if you're totally lost, make sure to save your questions for class. And also, if you stumbled upon this video and you're not necessarily signed up for Shaolin AI yet, you can sign up for our AI and machine learning bootcamp and become an expert in all things AI. You don't have to have any coding knowledge. But yeah, uh, thanks for coming by. Once again, send those questions along and we'll get you going. All right.